Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
Welcome to the Motivated Martial Artists Podcast with me, Gavin Cook.
And me, Jackson White.
And today we've got Neil Walton on the show. So Neil is currently a police officer and he's an expert level Krav Maga practitioner amongst many other martial arts that he's dipped his toe in. So we're really excited to hear Neil's story today. He's, like I say, really interested in the reality side of martial arts. So slightly different from a lot of the guests we get on, obviously with the sports side. So we're really keen to understand his story. So I'd like to welcome you on the show, first of all, Neil. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Much appreciated.
Yeah, good. Yeah, welcome. So I always get the pleasure of kicking off with our guest with the first question. So being our first Krav Maga practitioner, along with other reality martial arts, it'd be really interesting to understand how you started getting into to martial arts. But prior to that, where did you grow up? What's your backstory? And then how did you fall into the love of martial arts?
Well, probably similar to very others. I grew up in the northeast of England, which is predominantly working class background. I've got
just for our viewers, Neil. That's where the accent's coming from, people. Yeah, northeast.
Yeah, it's a northeast swang. Yeah. I've got a brother who's close to age to me. I'm slightly older than he is. And when we were little boys, our neighbour was one of the first persons on the block to have a video recorder. He had one of those old Betamax video recorders.
Oh, the Betamax were the best. Was it a top loader?
Betamax.
Yeah, I used to have a top loader.
Big size of a tank. Anyway, he had one, and he invited the family round to show this video recorder off. Me and my brother were like, primary school age. I think we were like 5, 6, 7 years of age. And one of the only videos he had was Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
And he stuck that in. I don't know whether it was suitable for kids that age or at that time. I don't know, but we were like,
they didn't have gradings then, did they? I don't think.
Just stick it on. And obviously, me and my brother were absolutely blown away seeing this Bruce Lee guy beat all the bad guys with the high kicks and everything. And from that point on, we'd absolutely bombard our parents like, we need to learn this stuff that this Bruce Lee guy is doing. And eventually, they took us to the nearest martial arts academy, the nearest dojang, and it was Taekwondo. Taekwondo was our first start, WTF style Taekwondo.
Okay.
And we both went, and we both absolutely loved it and took to it really, really well. So for I'd say all of our primary school age into our secondary school age, about 10 years, both myself and my brother practiced Taekwondo. We absolutely loved it and spent most of our time doing that and most of our time practicing. And then when we both hit our teens, we were bad lads. We got into the odd scrape and scrap, and the fights that we got into, I suddenly realised that not that we couldn't use the art that we were doing, but it was a bit different. Like, it wasn't like one-step sparring. It wasn't.
Yeah. That's because you're doing WTF, you see, Neil, and you can't use your hands, can you? You can't use your hands.
No punches in the head. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. So we were competing in Taekwondo and everything, and it gave us fitness, and our kicking was great as a result of it, and our timing and everything. But yeah, we got the odd scrap, and there was a lot of punching distance and a lot of rolling around the floor. And I was even as a teenager, I was thinking, there's something else I need to be training, or train a little bit different, or there was something happening. And I used to sort of like, and it wasn't, if you remember back then, it would have been the 80s. Specifically then, when someone who was a teenager years sort of like asking the instructors, why don't we punch to the head? Why don't we kick people in the legs? Why don't we
Yeah, you just didn't do it, did you? You just didn't ask those questions. You just accepted that they're the master and they know best, and that's the way it was.
And that was the way to do it, and that was the only way to do it. And I wasn't doing it out of being cheeky or disrespectful. I was really interested to know, like, why we didn't do those things. So
what was the response from your instructor in that?
I mean, at the time, it was very much like, this is how we do it, and if you do this correctly, you wouldn't need to do those other things.
Right.
And you've got to manage distance, and they shouldn't get that close to you. And a lot of these things, I think, in a lot of arts, wherever they specialise in their range, they tend to. Back in the day, I think, not so much now. They say, well, it wasn't the art that failed you; it was you failed it.
Yes, yeah.
And I think back in those days, all of the senseis or the instructors, everyone was so protective of their martial art, wasn't they? They were also protective of this is the best way, and everything else is crap. That was pretty much how it was, isn't it? Where when you look at the world we live in now with YouTube and that you've just got so much choice now. You know what I mean? You can just look and be like, I want to do that or I want to do that. There's no secrets anymore.
Exactly, yeah. And if you remember, cross training was really frowned upon.
Yeah.
Very much, you do this art, and this is all you do, and this is the best art, whatever it was, and you don't, it's disrespectful to go train elsewhere.
Well, do you know what? Funny you should say that. So my father, so he started Taekwondo in the late 70s, a big personality in the ITF Taekwondo world, and to the distaste of his instructors, he used to go and fight full contact karate.
Right. Yeah.
Totally different beast, because actually you're doing your ITF. It's semi-contact. You get hit, you get knocked out, you get disqualified. The aim's not to knock your opponent out; it's to hit them with head techniques and outscore them.
Yeah.
Hands and legs. Well, actually, he had a reputation for being a hard man in Taekwondo, not because Taekwondo taught him to be a hard man, because he was doing full contact karate, leg kicks, boxing stance, and basically kicking and hitting to knock people out. Yeah. So it was, and that was pretty much frowned on, but that gave him the reputation, because people knew if they slipped up in a kick or they didn't have quite a good guard, it'd spark them. Plain and simple. And a lot of people that at that time it was frowned on, but he saw that actually. No, I need to do that because I'm going to meet people of different styles, and I may need to actually get on that mat and fight hard.
Yeah.
And Taekwondo wouldn't have at the time. Didn't give him that because it was all more legs and it wasn't so hands orientated. So he saw the benefit back in the 70s of cross training and pretty much broke the boundaries to do that.
Yeah, and he used to batter us like every Sunday morning with it as well. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, every Sunday morning when we used to turn up for class, and he used to get your sparring stuff on. That was the end of us. You know what I mean? But then we kept going back every week for more and more, didn't we?
Yeah.
The first bit of cross training I was introduced to was actually, it was just quite. I don't really understand the thought process, because it was very much like, this is the only art you need, and this is what you do when you don't cross train. But I remember one of the instructors bought a judo club in 3 judo instructors, and they were showing some throws and some choking before everyone knew this stuff. And I was even as a teenager, I was absolutely blown away about how effective this choke was and how you could throw someone off your feet. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But even when they sort of went, again, you listen to the senior instructors talking, and it was very much like, oh yeah, that's okay, but they wouldn't even get near me. I would hit them in the head, and that would be the end of it. This is pre MMA, this is pre UFC shoot off, pancreas.
Sure,
yeah. So, but it sort of opened my eyes a little bit that there was more out there. So in my teens, both my brother and I, we found a Thai boxing club and a boxing club. And at first we tried to juggle everything. We tried to juggle still doing the Taekwondo and doing the boxing and doing the Thai boxing. But in the end, the boxing and the Thai boxing took over, and we ended up doing that. We club alike, and we both started concentrating on that. And the Taekwondo really helped, because at the time, again, it wasn't commonplace for Thai boxers to throw spinning back kicks or reverse turning kicks or axe kicks. And I used to employ them in with the Thai boxing. The Thai boxing lads used to say, don't do any of them funny kicks that you do.
That'll never work.
Those ones that keep scoring.
The ones they keep hitting me with, don't do them ones. You're not allowed to do them ones. but I was saying it in jest. I wasn't allowed to do it. But yeah, I used to do boxing, Thai boxing, and to be fair, if you talk about core arts, that's the one thing since I was about 14 years of age, I've continued on. I'm like in my mid-40s now, and I've always kept for striking, my boxing and my Thai boxing. Mm-hmm. But you know, still not lost the use of the things I learned in Taekwondo back in the day.
Yeah. I think there's just the stuff that you learn when you are young, though. I mean, when you sort of pre-12, pre-13, those sort of years. I think, you know, whatever you learn in them years stay with you, don't they? It stays with you for life, and you never ever shake it. I know, you know, obviously myself and Jackie, we learned when we were youngsters, then we took quite a big break, and it's amazing when you come back after 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden you get your kit on, you think, actually, I can remember all that stuff from when I was a youngster. It's the stuff that you're trying to learn as an adult that you can't remember. You remember it, and then a week later you forgot it again, haven't you? But you can still remember the stuff that you did when you were 10.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in terms of, you know, reality, I think it was a cross section, as in, like, because I was competing, specifically Thai boxing a lot. You know, I was competing Thai boxing, but a lot of striking, different arts, but more the full contact arts, and I think that give a lot of things that fall in well with the reality, as in it gives you like timing, discipline, fitness, the adrenaline dump that you have when you know someone's going to really
solid guard,
knock you out, solid guard, how to generate power, how to try and knock someone else out. So I was doing the Thai boxing and the boxing, and then again I fell into something else because of the judo kept going around my mind from the previous like insight I had. Ended up going to a submission grappling club, and again I fell in love with that as well. So this is when UFC hadn't even been on yet. This was pre like 93. I was still ordering, probably like you guys, I was still ordering like videos in the back of Martial Arts Illustrated and Combat magazine of like
looking for the latest competitions.
The pancreas competitions or the Shuto competitions and the things that were coming, you know, the Valetudo things. As I was getting into the grappling and striking, so ended up competing in a few what would be, before they had the regulated rules in MMA. Remember, we wrote over to a Dutch Thai boxing camp and said, have you got anyone who wants to do what was called free fight to them? And we sort of made some rules up, and we brought a team over from Holland, and me and my brother had these quasi MMA fights on a Thai boxing show. And again, the audience didn't even know what they were looking at. They were like, well, what are these guys doing? To be fair, we didn't know much what we were doing either. But you know, it was fun at the time. But it wasn't that a lot of people weren't doing that back then. So to be fair, I did more stand-up striking fighting than I did the precursor to MMA, just because there was more availability to fight.
Yeah, sure.
But we continued on with the submission grappling, continued on with all my stand-up, and then during the time I got to sort of like employment age, I joined the police service. And then obviously I learned a lot of things from that, dealing with the members of the public, dealing with conflict, as in verbal conflict daily, how to de-escalate people, how to deal with people who've got issues. And then on the odd occasion, you're also talking about how to deal with violence.
Sure.
What you can and can't do in certain circumstances, and then, you know, how to try and control someone who doesn't want to be controlled. Whether it would be with your verbal communication or whether it be physically. So that was a massive eye-opener for me, alongside the martial arts, you know.
Well, the thing is with the martial arts, it teaches you to be calm in certain situations, doesn't it? Your martial arts training plays quite a big role in that, in making you level-headed, I suppose, to a degree. Because, you know, that's all part of the discipline and the training within whatever martial art you do. When you get to a certain level, you know, you said you did Taekwondo for 10 years and then obviously you went on to the other ones. You know, if you get whatever martial art you do, when you get to a certain level, you've had to have those, you know, a certain level of, you know, your integrity and the hope. And I think the calmness comes over time, doesn't it?
Yeah. And learning to, I think the biggest thing that I picked up, certainly, as I did martial arts as a youth and, you know, thrown into the ring in the days where they didn't have weight divisions or age divisions. If you were a junior, you could be fighting from a 5-year-old up to a bloody 10-year-old. You know, that's a massive difference, isn't it, in terms of ability as a kid. And you learn how to control that, like you mentioned, that adrenaline dump. You know what's coming, and you can just control it. So, you know, when I talk about it when I go for job interviews, you know, it doesn't bother me. You know, people are worried about those sort of things. To me, being able to control my adrenaline from being thrown on the mat as a kid, knowing that some 16-year-old is going to potentially beat the crap out of you when you're only 12, it's a big deal. But you learn to adjust and you cope with that, and you become familiar with those feelings, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
And all of a sudden, you're familiar with it. You know what's going to happen. You know how your body's going to react. You're going to feel your heart rate elevate. You're going to feel that spike of adrenaline, but you know that, and it's not new. And if it's not new, you can control your thoughts and your breathing and everything else, and then enter the situation, you know, relatively calm and well prepared.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not that you don't have the feeling. It's just it's not a shock to you, is it? It's not much of a shock to you. So you tend to be able to function a little bit better. Your freeze might diminish a little bit, so you can act a little bit quicker than others, maybe think a bit better than others. And like you say, like you go for a job interview or something along the lines, or you're standing up and speaking in front of people, which people might find daunting.
Yeah, again, it's that same feeling, isn't it? You get those same feelings, but you can deal with it.
Yeah,
the only difference is one's a slow burner sometimes, isn't it? And one's instant. And I suppose, like you know, when you go for a competition, you know, you're there and you sat on the mat waiting for your turn to step in the ring, and the nerves are getting you. You feel sick, you get clammy, and you're sort of, it's the build up, isn't it? Well, I suppose being a police officer, there must be times when all of a sudden you're nice and calm, you're driving down the street, and instantly it's bam, right straight away. You're in that zone, aren't you?
Yeah.
How would you deal with that?
You see, I think it was a benefit having the slow burners. Obviously, when you know you're competing, you've got like you know, your months and weeks leading up to the event, so you're slowly getting that drip fit of adrenaline. I actually found it quite, I don't know whether it was because of that, I found it easier dealing with the initial dump. Was easier than the weight, and I think because it had some sort of, like, not that anyone's a Superman or anything like that, anyone can be hurt at any time, but because I had some faith in my fitness and my ability, and the fact that, you know, I thought of myself, and with rightly or wrongly, I probably competed against people who were more equipped to hurt me than the people who might be standing in front of me, or might know more than the people who might stand in front of me. It's sort of like give me a little bit more ease to be able to control that adrenaline dump and think, right, what do I need to do next?
It is the power of the mind, the confidence, isn't it? You have a degree of confidence without arrogance or complacency, because you know you've been in similar or more dangerous situations potentially. So therefore, and straight away you can deal with that
and overcome those situations as well, isn't it? Yeah. You know, I mean, how many times have you stepped onto the mat and you've looked at that guy and thought, Jesus, he's going to kill me, and then you actually win.
Yeah.
And then it gives you that sense of, actually, what was I worrying about? You know what I mean? You know.
Well, you only think that once or twice, don't you? Then you realise, you know, regardless of the physique, the stature, you know, in your mind, if you're well prepared, you can do what you want. Well, you can achieve more than what you that little chimp on the back of the shoulders telling you.
And even if it's, you know, even if it's some degree you're in a dangerous situation and it's not quite true, the fact that you think, well, I've been through this. You
believe yourself and you believe in your abilities. That'll drive you forward.
Yeah. I think, well, I can handle this. I've had, in my, like, even if it's incorrect opinion, I've handled worse. So why can't I handle this or this situation?
It gives you that mental resilience.
Yeah, exactly. And the more, obviously, in the police service, you deal with all kinds of things, and the more you do it, and the more you experience it, it's another one of them things. Well, I've got through this, and I handled it last time, and it just gives you that little bit more confidence to say, well, why would this time be any different? I can still handle this.
So, what's your position in the forces then, Neil?
Well, at the moment, I mean, I've been in for 25 years now, and I've spent almost all of it front line, dealing with the public. But at the moment, I'm in the training department. Okay. Which deals with, like, personal safety training and things like this. Yeah.
You get a chance to pass on your experience, presumably, and get paid for it.
Exactly. It's a win-win, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but it ticks both boxes.
When you train the youngsters, or is there a certain age group that you start training? I'm just interested to know what your thoughts are on some of the youngsters that are now coming maybe out of school or out of college, and then they're joining the police force. You know, what their attitudes are like. You know, I know we all talk about the snowflake generation, but obviously you would probably see it firsthand. You probably get these cocky youngsters that come in and be interested to know your thoughts on, how they are, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the recruitment process is very good. So it's designed to sort of like get the people we need for the job, and it takes all kinds of people, all kinds of demographics, because we're in the police service, you're dealing with a whole demographic of different people, and it's like anything else. You've got people who are good at certain aspects of the work, and some are better at others, and you tend to migrate towards the areas that you're good at. And even on your shifts, and the people you work with, you get to know the people you work with, and you think, well, okay, this person's good at talking to people, this person's good at the IT part of it, this person's good. And you tend to sort of like, if you can, work to your strengths. You've got to be an all-rounder, but you're going to work to your strengths, aren't you?
Yeah, and you need, I think, in today's society, you need that diversity, don't you? Not just in minorities, but in religions, in capabilities, like you say, a good talker, somebody that's good on the IT and the comm side, someone's good on the driving side. You need that whole team effort, don't you?
Exactly, yeah. And luckily, there's a lot of posts out there where if you have got a speciality and you so choose, you can start to migrate towards that, where you can sort of like use your talent to some use.
Okay.
Greater use.
How much training do the police officers get in unarmed combat then, Neil? I know there's obviously, it's quite prominent at the moment, obviously with all of the stuff going on in the US, obviously with the George Floyd type thing. I know there's been a lot of talk saying that the police officers just don't get the sort of training that they should do. It's almost, you go there, you have 2 weeks of training, out you go, you're on the job sort of thing.
You know what? I'll answer that for you, Gavin. When you have a student that turns up to your class for a rapid 2-week course, is he going to be really, really competent as someone that's been doing it all their life?
No, of course not.
Well, there we go. And I think that's probably the same scenario, isn't it?
Yeah. But I'm just interested in how much training they do get, really.
But like I say, from a martial artist point of view, with all of us having an interest in martial arts, we dedicate our lives to becoming as proficient as we possibly can be. It is part of a police officer's role to have some personal safety training, but obviously it's a bit part of a vast amount of skills that they need, and obviously training time isn't probably what you or I would want to do. I train like probably yourselves most days, but they've got a limited amount of time to learn some skills to be able to control.
I mean, we had the same sort of thing in the military. We would get, before deployment, you may get an afternoon session on hands-off training or arrest and restraint training, and that'd be you for the next 6 months. And then 6 months time, you may get a half a day training on it again. It's not really, it's not enough to put those drills into practice. You'll have a knowledge of it, and I think that's probably the same sort of scenario. Whereas as a martial artist, you're there practicing and refining consistently, aren't you?
It's the reps, isn't it? We all know it's the reps and the drilling, and then can we do those drills under pressure, whether that be sparring or all kinds of other pressure test drills. Yeah. And we're doing this, so it becomes hopefully second nature. What the officers get used to is obviously dealing with the public over and over and over and over again. Yeah. And they get basic stuff, and it has to be basic because obviously in the times of stress and adrenaline dump, if you're not practicing over and over and over and over again, it has to be basic stuff to try and keep people safe. And obviously you've got all the tactics involved trying to keep people safer too. But yeah, I mean, if it was me and I got to choose for everybody, they'd be training daily, but that's just me because I like it. But for others, it's not like that,
It must be quite nice though, in a sort of sick sort of way that you've done all these martial arts through the years, and now you actually get a chance daily to actually put some of it into use. Because as martial artists, a lot of us train for years and years and years, but have never ever had a real street fight, if you like. They've never used their art outside of the dojang, so to speak. So, well, at least that's something I suppose within your job, that you get to see what works, and you get to sort of dismiss stuff maybe that doesn't work as well, which has probably led you quite nicely onto obviously the business that you run outside of the forces.
Yeah, and I think mostly you learn about people and psychology and communication more than anything else. I honestly believe that if I have, I mean, there's the odd occasion when it goes horrible, like when it can go wrong for other reasons. But I honestly believe if I have to put hands on somebody outside, I've probably failed in some way, either my tactics or my communication skills.
Yeah.
Does that make some kind of sense?
Yeah,
You know?
almost definitely, yeah.
Yeah, like I want a peaceful resolution to everything. And there's always stuff to learn from when it hasn't been the case, or there's always contributing factors.
Okay, so just talk us through your current business then, Neil, and how that got started.
Sorry, I'm just going to get a drink here.
Yeah, sure.
I hope that's a healthy drink, Neil.
It is.
There's no vodka in that cola, is there?
So so when I was most of my time in the martial arts was taken up with competing, training, competing, and going to work. Training, competing, going to work. Obviously, some instruction, and then I got sent on the first part of the reality part was it, and this would probably be the same for you guys. Way back when, one of the first books I read about reality self-defense was Jeff Thompson's Watch My Back.
Yeah,
he lives down the road from me in Coventry.
Right, yeah. Which was, again, this is back in the early days, which is like really prompted like the way I trained and what I trained, and how I thought about training. Like many people, opened up my eyes to a lot of things, and probably really steered my life in a certain direction. Just that one book. I remember getting it delivered, and then I read it in one go. First time I'd read a book in one go, I couldn't put it down. So that was the first sort of like input into sort of reality. And then within the police service, obviously you've got your personal safety training, things like that. And I was lucky enough to get sent on a few different courses through work, looking at reality self-defense things. Peter Constantine was one of our visitors, showing us some of the double hip things, double hip slap and double hip punch, and his take on things, and that was fantastic. And then, but a lot of my time was competing. And then when I decided to stop competing, just because I got a bit older and a bit more beat up.
Just out of interest, how old were you when you
stopped
from competitive?
I think I was around about 34, 35.
Okay, that's young still, really.
Yeah, it is
nowadays.
Yeah, it is nowadays. Yeah, but I think it crossed over with having done a lot in the past since being a young boy, a little kid.
Yeah,
it was all like competing, training, competing. And then the change about getting married and having a family and
push those restraints. It just put the shackles on you a bit. When I left the forces, so I did martial arts from 4 years old to 16. When I joined the armed forces, it wasn't a recognised sport. So I got into my rugby and a bit of boxing and athletics and did all those good stuff. When I came out, I picked it back up and then started competing from at the age of 32. So I had that 16-year gap, basically.
Right, okay, yeah.
So I came back into it pretty fresh again. I had all the moves and all the skills. I just didn't have the flexibility.
Yeah.
But I had.
I don't know. I'd question the moves and the skills as well, Jackson.
Gavin, you only have to look at Gavin's nose and you'll see the moves were there quite comfortably. And managed to get back into it to quite a high level, international level again. But having that break for those 16 years contributed to that. If I can imagine if I'd have been continuing on from the age of 16, probably the age of 32, 33, I'd have been, had enough and retired. But I didn't retire till the age of 42, 43.
Right, cool. Yeah, I think it was because it fit that way. Quite a demanding job at the time, not like what I was doing day to day. The fact that it really took from my young years all the way up to that age, martial arts was the only other thing I did outside of working. Yeah. Training as much as I possibly could, running, competing, that kind of thing.
Getting hit in the weights. That was the thing I found really hard as I hit probably about 36, 37, dropping the weight. Yeah. I had to work twice as hard, twice as long on the road, twice as hot with the sauna suits on. Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah. So I was doing always had my foot on everything had to work and had to be reality based. But luckily, the competing I was doing was a lot of full contact stuff, so that that fit well. And then when I decided, okay, I'm going to stop competing and scale it down a little bit, so I'm not like always at the gym, give some family some time, things like this. I thought, right, okay, I'm gonna look more into like concentrating on reality-based stuff in terms of teaching now, rather than just being selfish with myself. And then one of the sessions I got sent on through work was a Krav Maga session. So I went down to do this Krav Maga course, and it was like a basic introduction. And as I was just taking part, the guy who was taking it went, "Oh, what have you trained before? You've obviously trained." And I said, "Oh no, I'm really into like training and do this, that, and the other." And he was like, "Oh, you should look into do this. You should try and go through the instructor's course and this, that, and the other. We're looking for people in the country who've already got a skill set." And because obviously I was into Jeff Thompson stuff and reality stuff and Peter stuff and all that kind of stuff, and I had obviously the sports side of it as well. I thought, well, I'm not doing the sports side now. I'll give it a crack. So for a period of years, I went and did this initial course and started looking at the Krav Maga world. Ended up going to Israel finally to take my expert test. And I thought, well, I can mix and match all this together. The things I saw in Krav Maga with the associations that were with that were lacking, I thought I can add to with the things I learned from my sports side. Sure. And the things I learned from my reality side, from my experience within the police service. Yeah. Because I don't think anything's a catch-all, is it? And Krav Maga had some good things, and they were meshing things from, I could see as a martial artist beforehand, they were meshing things from other systems and putting it in one system with what they thought works and what they thought was...
It's no different from what Bruce Lee did, is it?
No, that's exactly how I saw it. I saw it was like a different version, a different cultured version of JKD. It was adding the things that worked. The things that at the time, I think things are progressing since then, I saw missing were a lot of the pre-fight stuff, a lot of the de-escalation stuff, a lot of the justification stuff. I saw that they were trying to throw, and this is my opinion before I get shot down by a lot of Krav Maga people, trying to throw punches like boxers, but they weren't boxers. Okay. Trying to throw kicks like Thai boxers, or the borrowed kicks from karate or Taekwondo. But there was, and I can see why, because they're doing one system. They weren't quite as... the finesse wasn't there as much as it would be if we did the art they were borrowed from.
Probably fluid, more fluid.
Well, it's fluid, yeah.
It's interesting because that's how martial arts have evolved,
Yeah.
If you look at Taekwondo, you look at karate, they've all been taken different systems, and someone's thought, you know what, that's not quite working for what I want. I'm going to put this bit together and I'm going to add this.
Yeah.
For Taekwondo, he took karate. He put a lot of physics into the speed, force, and power side. Taekwondo was developed, and then other things have developed along that. So I think it's if you don't evolve, you stand still, and if you stand still, you die. That you die out. So it's important that all these things evolve all the time, and it's actually quite good to hear that you've put all the pre stuff in as well, because a lot of people don't teach that.
No. I mean, I think you get it from experience, don't you? I mean, I think you don't know what you don't know. If that makes
true, one of my favourite sayings.
Yeah. So, and then when you start talking about these things, you can sometimes see where people little light bulbs going on and going, that's actually right. That's correct. That's part of the whole gamble. I think if you say that you teach, this is the difference between martial arts and maybe self-defense or personal safety. If you teach martial arts, it doesn't have to be street effective, because there's lots of different arts that aren't geared up for that, but there can be. But martial arts itself, if you teach self-defense, then it has to have the pre-fight, and it has to have the justification, and it has to have the psychology, and it has to have the aftermath. It has to have all of it, including the physicality, which is quite often is borrowed from martial arts. You can see it's borrowed from martial arts. Yeah. And that's the difference from me. I think you hear people talking about, again, I think maybe it's a little bit like elitism back in the day. You've got like the combat sports world sometimes, and the self-defense world sometimes, and sometimes they don't meet.
Well, you've got two camps as well, haven't you? You've got the people that say, why would you study a martial art? A martial art has got rules. It's got you know, you can't do this, you can't kick you can't kick below the waist, you can't punch in the face. Why would you learn a martial art? Because the street world is so different. But then you've got the other side that say, well, you know, having that base in the martial arts world is going to, you know, give you much more of a fighting chance in the real world.
It gives you a bigger toolkit, doesn't it?
Of course it does. It gives you loads of things. It gives you a toolkit. It gives you the use of the adrenaline dump, like we discussed. It gives you timing in case you do need to use physicality. It gives you determination. It gives you used to being hit, not panicking as much. You know, it gives you a lot. That world gives you a lot of things that would cross over to the self-defense world.
Sure.
And sometimes you get two camps, and I think from coming from both camps in my time is you need a bit of both. If that's what you're looking for, if you're looking at reality, you need the sparring element, you need the timing, the dedication, the discipline, the fitness to give you a better chance in the street world part of it. If it becomes physical, obviously.
Sure.
Because I've got, there was guys I knew with it, not just in the Krav Maga world, but in the self-defense world, saying, well, yeah, but there's rules and regulations in combat sports. I would just poke you in the eye, I would just kick you in the groin. And my argument was being, well, you can't even land a jab on me, so how are you going to get your finger in my eyes?
My personal view, and I think a bit like yours, you need a little bit of everything.
You need a little bit of everything, yeah.
And you know, when I get guys that come into my martial arts class, I'm purely a Taekwondo. You know, I don't protest. It's the best thing that you need for self-defense. I think it gives you great fitness. It gives you great timing. All those things that you've just mentioned. And at the end of it, if you want to go and do a controlled sport, you can go and have a controlled fight with it. Yeah, that's what it gives you. Yeah. If you're in a street fight against someone that can't fight, you'll probably have the upper hand. If you're up against a ground fighter, you'll have the upper hand until you get on the ground, and then you're pretty much screwed. You know, that's what it is. It is what it is. You know, I make no bones about that. So when I get guys that come to me and say, "Oh, I do a little bit of MMA," I say, "So which part did you specialize in?" I say, "No, we did a bit of everything." My personal view is you've got to have a couple of specialities. You need to be an expert, either a bit of ground, be an expert in stand-up, or whether that's a taekwondo, a kickboxing, a Thai boxing, or boxing. And then you've got to be a judo player, a grappler, a wrestler. And you've got to be a ground, and you need the upper and the stand-up side as well. And you've got to be an expert in both of those fields, and that will give you a maximum advantage.
Exactly. It's like you say, what you go to. You've got to have a go-to, haven't you?
Yeah. You know, my go-to is to leg it, mate.
That's probably the best tactic.
Right. Let me tell you this right now. His go-to is to leg it. This is a man who goes running on a running machine. So it's not a high standard of go-to be fair.
I'm getting comfy in my old age, Jackson. That's funny.
Yeah, fair enough. I was giving him a hard time this week, but I said, "What are you doing, Gavin?" He says, "I'm going running." I went, "Oh, how far are you off to?" "No, I'm going on a running machine." I said, "Well, you're not really going running. You're just going picking your legs up for half an hour."
It was raining. What are you talking about? It's COVID. I didn't want to meet anyone with who might cough on me.
It's funny you should say that. It's like when you do it, if you're given personal safety talk, you know, a lot of people who maybe don't study martial arts and don't do any self-defense systems, and you say, "What would you do?" And they would say, "Well, I would run away." And I go, "Well, that's a great tactic. It's a fantastic tactic if you're aware enough to see the problem coming in the first."
Yeah.
And secondly, I always say, "When was the last time you went running?"
Because do a good 50-meter dash, and that's it. You're at the mercy.
When they catch you, if you run and they catch you and they're quicker than you,
and you're tired.
Exactly, and you're like, "Oh, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd stood my ground and fought." I think, but joking aside, though, I think, I mean, obviously you'll know better than me, Neil, because you certainly teach that side of it. You know, there's no, I think pride gets in the way a lot, especially a lot of the youngsters. I think there's almost this pride of, you know, you can't run, you've got to stand your ground and fight. If someone pulls a knife on you, they watch these crappy videos on YouTube, and you would have seen them, and you would have cringed probably as much as we do when you see them and think, geez, you know, running away. If you're outnumbered, and you're thinking, you know, there's going to be a get out that way. Seriously, that's the way to go. I would say.
Well, I think that is the one of the most important things. I was given a talk the other day about ego getting in the way, and in terms of like, I obviously, if someone pulled a weapon on you and they're trying to mug you, what are they looking for? Usually 9 times out of 10, they're looking for, cash, belongings, something to maybe.
There you go, take it.
Feed a habit. Give them a tactical way and let them take it. Yeah. And if that was your A game, that's what you've practiced to do, very, very safely. That's your first move, isn't it? It's almost so after the fact when you think, well, I've seen martial artists do this, and I've seen other people who think they should have acted a certain way when they've been a victim of crime. Maybe they've been mugged or something's happened, and they've said, "Oh man, I should have done this. I should have fought this. I should have done this technique." And I've always said, "Well, what happened in the end?" Well, someone took my phone, or whatever. I said, "Did you get to go home that night? Were you injured?
Yeah.
Were they injured? Was the other person injured? Did you get arrested?" When all these things are like, no, I got to go home. I didn't get arrested. I just lost the phone. I just lost some money. And I was like, well, that's a really good solution.
That's a good victory, isn't it?
That's a good victory.
In the scheme of things, yeah.
And if you can try and think of it that way, then you don't have as much of the psychological damage afterwards where you start beating yourself up going, well, why didn't I do this? And why didn't I act? Maybe I've trained for 20, 30 years now. I thought I would do a reverse punch or a round or what. And no, that was my A game. That was what I was supposed to do. That was my spin kick. That was what I was supposed to do. And I think that helps a lot with the psychology afterwards of getting over that kind of event, rather than putting undue pressure on you.
Plus when those type of events happen, you have a big dump of cortisol, and you're there, and you can't remember. You can't remember what actually happened because you've had a dump at that time, not that type of dump. You might have had that type of dump as well. But you're trying to think back clearly about the incident, and you can't really remember the clear facts, can you? Because you was in that adrenaline mode.
Exactly. You've got the auditory exclusion, you've got your peripheral vision going, you've got the time distortion going. You're in the freeze mode, like you think you're reacting and you're not, and you're just stuck there for a bit because of that adrenaline dump. But I think people sometimes live in a bit of a make-believe movie world where they should be acting in a certain way, and that builds into the ego, and then it gives them psychological problems afterwards. Whereas the real world's a little bit different, isn't it?
I always say to my club, obviously when I'm teaching, and I don't profess to be certainly I'd like to think I'm fairly streetwise, but I certainly don't profess to be anything when it comes to reality stuff, because I don't do much of that reality type stuff. We're very a sport based club. We do a lot of sparring, but we don't do that much self-defense style stuff because I don't feel best placed to teach it because it's not something I practice a lot. And I think, but I always say to my lot that I think that a lot of the best defense is having that inner confidence to not be the victim in the first place. If you're the guy that's in the pub, or you're the guy that's got his head down and looks like a victim, and all of a sudden they're the ones that people are going to target. Where if you got your head held up high, you stick your chest out and you look confident and you look like a confident person who's got that inner knowledge of martial arts, whether they've ever used it or not. Then I think you've got a good chance of maybe getting out of that situation if it occurs, and hopefully it won't occur to you.
And having the alertness, I think one of the key things is situational awareness, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
when you see those situations, you can see them, can't you? You know when you feel the vibe, you see the posture of people, the body positions, the behaviors. If you can identify that early enough, you can just extract yourself out of it, and that to me is the key.
The majority of situations can be completely diffused just by being switched on.
Yeah.
And obviously, you're right. I completely agree, Gavin. If you hold yourself in a certain way, and martial arts can do that for you, and physical training can do that for you, you're less likely to be the person that person targets or would choose to be a victim. Because hey, if people are targeting you because they want to take money or belongings off you or whatever, if that's their goal, they're not going to choose the person that thinks is going to give them a hard time. People don't want to be caught. What's the point of doing the crime?
They don't want to do the time. That's
exactly right. So that absolutely helps. But being switched on and seeing what's having a thought process of like a plan of what's going on around you, what non-verbals are people giving you, who potentially could be a problem, what would I do if that problem arose? That is 99.9% of personal safety, not the physicality. That's when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
The problem is, and you can see this, if you went into any busy town centre, I'm sure, and just have a look around and see how many people aren't switched on. You know, how many people are heads down, how many people are hoods up, how many people
looking at their phones, walking around looking at their phones. Yeah.
I mean, I went to do a seminar down in London, not when we could, but before COVID hit us all, and I was sat in a coffee shop just looking out in London, and I was picking only the odd person out that wasn't looking at the floor of the phones.
Really?
Yeah, it was like a uniformity. It was scary, and I was thinking, well, you know, you're in a big city here, and nobody switched on.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely
it's like being in a sweet shop, isn't it, for the right person?
It is, yeah.
And I'm looking at eyes as a you know, a self-defense trainer or a reality self-defense trainer or a police officer.
You're not looking at it from someone that's looking to target somebody.
Exactly right. But if it was, you know,
in a sweet shop.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, then. So, you mentioned you've been down to London doing lectures. Do you do that? Is that a part-time thing or part of your business outside of the police force?
It's part of
the support organisations.
Yeah, I do a couple of things. Obviously, I do stuff for martial arts clubs. I've got a few friends within the martial arts community, and obviously they get me down to either do the reality self-defense kind of seminars and workshops, but sometimes just even to cover the martial arts that I train in, depending on what they ask for. So I do that as a part of the business, and then sometimes it's corporate. You know, sometimes I've done work for the NHS. I've done work for the police service. I've even done work for the military up at Catterick. Where they've asked for a certain topic to be covered within line of what they may need to do at work, and I've wrote them programs of things I think would be beneficial to them, and have employed my services that way. So it's a little bit like the combat sports and the self-defense thing. It's a couple of strands. I am a martial artist, so I do sometimes do martial arts seminars, but I'm also heavily interested in reality self-defense. So I tend to work for people that need that within their life.
Okay, and just for our listeners, you know, we got a wide variety of listeners, quite a diverse demographic. If someone was listening and they wanted to get hold of you to run a corporate event for their organisation, for example, for situational awareness or get out of situation type training, how do they get hold of you?
Well, we've got a website, Reality Self-Defense Concepts. My email, if I can give it out on here, is Neil at realityselfdefenseconcepts.com. I'm available on that.
We can stick it in the show notes as well. We can stick it in the show notes.
Any questions or anything about that kind of event or questions in general, to be fair, they can forward it through there. I'm happy to answer them.
Sure. Okay.
Cool.
We're coming towards the end now. So I normally get to ask the last question. If it was up to Gavin, we'd be on here for about another 2 hours.
I could talk for hours.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm the timekeeper, unfortunately. Or fortunately, you may have something else to do this evening. So, given what you know now, we always try and get this off all of our guests. What sort of advice would you give your younger you that's getting into martial arts?
People have asked me this, like, within my peer group before, about like what would you do, or what arts would you study, or what advice would you give? I just think martial arts are fantastic. Find an art that you really enjoy, something that like clicks with you, and just spend your time doing that. They all have something to offer, and different arts suit different people. It wouldn't bother me what art I was doing. I love all of it. Probably just that.
The thing is, it's a difficult one these days, because these days you have the pick of the bunch. That's where when you think back to our days in the early 80s, late 70s, you know, you literally, like you said at the early part of the podcast, you just went along to the nearest club, and it could have been ninjutsu, it could have been kendo, it could have been anything, couldn't it? You just don't know what. Unfortunately, if it had been ninjutsu, you would have probably quickly tried something else. Especially when you walk in.
When Gavin joined Taekwondo, he thought he was joining ninjutsu.
Yeah, no,
I turned up with his throwing stars and his ninja hood. I looked like a right clown.
I went to the ninjutsu club first, but I walked in and I couldn't see anybody.
Yeah,
He said, I remember him saying to my dad once, Mr. White, when are we going to learn to climb trees?
Listen, right, Neil, I bet in your younger days, you went out and you bought some ninja, those claw things you used to climb the trees on.
Oh, I had everything. Do you
remember the old blow? Do you remember the old blow sticks you used to get? The old little ninja blow. I used to shoot that at my brother.
American Ninja was on on most weeks.
That was it, yeah. But joking aside, though, it used to be so easy to go and buy. You used to walk into a martial arts store, didn't you? I mean, I was talking about this the other day. There was a martial arts shop in Coventry, and I remember going in there and buying 2 Ninja Death Stars, a blowpipe, and some climbing hooks to try and climb trees.
All on the banned weapons list now, obviously, for good reason.
Yeah. I've still got them.
I used to, as a kid, again, you can have anything as a kid, can't you? These back in the day, I had a shuriken, I had the throwing stars, and I had it on a nail on my bedroom wall. Now, I also had a light switch, one of them rope light switch, and my bed in front of it. And one night the rope was behind the throwing star, and I pulled the rope, and it obviously unhooked it, and it fell down and stuck in my head. Yeah, I had one of them stuck in my head.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
I had to go down to my parents and say, "Could you take this out of my head, please?"
The good old days.
Right, that's what the kids are missing now, isn't they? That's what the kids are missing. That. We used to get to throw Death Stars at trees, and they're stuck in on their PlayStations.
Right, we're going to wrap it up there, Neil. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on this evening. And again, it's our first, I suppose, reality combat instructor on the show. So I know our listeners will be enthused by what you've had to say today.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Been great having you on, for sure.
Appreciate it. Been a pleasure being on.
And I'll say thanks for Darren for introducing us both. So, like I say, I know Darren loves his Krav, so I'm sure he'll be listening to this for sure.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and our Facebook group, The Motivated Martial Artist Podcast.
Or check us out on Instagram, The Motivated Martial Artists,
where you'll see much more content and early insight into some of the interviews and some of the guests and some of the conversations around the things that we're discussing. Hope to see you all next week.
Bye for now.
Bye.